Right, our first character animation tutorial. So here we have tentacle 0. It's a very simple mesh, well, pretty simple mesh, and it has a subdiv tag on it. This should be available on the website under tutorial resources. So the first thing I'm going to do is create the skeleton. Now let me first switch over to the animation view. I've already done that. And I'm going to look at the left side of the, let's call it the right side of the tentacle. And I'm going to center it in the view. And if you have a look in the tutorial, it suggests that you create a actually there's a problem in the PDF, but create a skeleton. So we're going to go to the character tools and we're going to pick the joint tool. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start here and I'm just going to kind of create a line here. But there's an important thing to do, which is not to make the line too straight once we start. So I'm going to go here and then I'm going to go forward, backward, forward, backward. And I'm just going to create an extra bone up the top. And that's because Cheetah 3D doesn't seem to use the last joint very much. So we've built a quick skeleton, and you'll see that I had the tentacle selected, and now it's a child. If it doesn't actually matter whether or not the skeleton's a child. In fact, I'll actually pull it out so that it's not. Now I'm going to create a skeleton modifier on the tentacle. So notice I've got this selected. I'm going to create a skeleton modifier, and then I'm going to just drag. Now watch, the skeleton modifier is selected. Let's suppose it isn't. I have to click on this. Now I have to click and drag in one smooth motion. If I click here, it becomes deselected and I have no target. So I have to click here and then click and drag in one smooth motion and I get these things. And then I'm going to automatically bind. So I'm just going to say auto bind. And now we want to see how we did. So let's go back to a better view here, camera. And you can see how the vertices are assigned. So for example, this vertex here has got a little bit of assignment here. These ones here have got, this one here has got very strongly assigned to here, and so on. Now let's take this for a spin. So I'm going to just take this joint, and we can move the mesh here, and now we can see our joints even over the mesh. So watch this. I'm just going to pose my mesh here. And here we are. We've got a pretty decent little animation rig here, without very much work at all. So that's the initial setup for the mesh. We can, I think in the book I illustrate it with a kind of skeleton tentacle guy bent over. And we probably want this one here to be, because he's trying to balance. And you'll have a look here. I'm not really happy with what's going on as I tip him over. So we might, if we were doing this seriously, we might want to make a slightly better rig. In fact, let's do that. This is going way beyond what's in the book, but let's go and take this joint here, and I'm going to create a new joint. So I go to character, joint tool, and we also want to be on the right. And I'm going to create a joint there. And then I'm going to take this joint here and put it in there. And now, wait a sec, I've got them around the wrong way. Let me undo that. Put this one here, and that one there. Now you'll see I've added a joint to the hierarchy. Now go and take this skeleton tag here and delete all of this. Actually, I'll just delete the whole tag. I'll create a new skeleton tag. Notice I undid all of the transformations before I did this. So I'm going to go in here, drag the hierarchy back in, and heat bind it. Now, I want this guy to be bent over a bit here, and you'll see how this joint here gives me a little bit more control. So I go over here, I can bend back here. Now I can bend this one forward, and we get a more realistic pose. You know, insofar as you can have a realistic pose for a tentacle. But there you have it. Now, bear in mind that I haven't saved any poses here, and so I can easily get my rig into an unfixable state. But if we go back to if I go and, for example, push this over here, I can also click here and say show bind pose. So that's kind of how you recover it. But there are better options. I could, for example, go and add the pose modifier here, and I could quickly create a new pose and call it bind. And then, for example, I might go here and do the lean back pose. Whoops. Lean back pose here. So, oops, too far. Okay. And you might notice that there's aspects of this rig that aren't fantastic. If I go to perspective here, you'll see that he kind of sucks in his sucker when he's bent there, and that's because the automatic assignment really hasn't quite worked. And again, if we were serious here, we'd probably tweak that, but I don't really care. So I'm going to go in here and say, I'll call this anticipate. And now I'm going to go, oh, look at that. I put the pose tag in the wrong place. I need to put the pose tag in on the hierarchy. So I'm going to go and put the pose tag back in here. So I create a bind pose. And now I need to do the anticipate pose again. You will do a lot of undoing, and you'll do a lot of rework when you're animating. That's just the life of animators. Anyway, so we go through here. Let's take a look at this like extra joints I created here. See, it doesn't do anything. And I'll go and create a new pose here, which I'll call anticipate. All right, and now I can go back to bind, or I can go back to anticipate. So the idea here is this is the preparation for his jump cycle, because he actually jumps around. So let's create a new pose, and the idea here is he's going to jump up and a bit forward, and then, and this is a good reason not to have the skeleton inside as a child, because having if I had the skeleton inside here, you're trying to move the thing based on something that's a child of it. It's a bad idea. So it was a good thing to move the skeleton out. I'll click on here, and now the idea is that he's kind of stretched himself out and to get into the air. And in animation, you should always exaggerate, so he kind of has to go backwards, to bend over backwards to get into the air. So let's go back here maybe, and we're going to tilt him forward even more. And this thing here, we want to kind of almost give him a belly, if that makes sense. So, yeah, there we go. So, and now maybe give him some altitude. Whoops, no, we won't probably do it with this thing here. So go back, and I'll create a new pose, and I'll call it leap. All right, so here we go. We start with the bind pose. He anticipates, and then he leaps. Oh yeah! Now he's going to have to land, so he's going to have an impact. Now let's go and go back to the here, and I'm just going to zero out this coordinate, so he's, I guess it wasn't 0, so we'll just move it, take this guy here, move it back here. All right, but now he's landing. So how is he landing? Well, again, we have to exaggerate. So he's going to land in this position. Oh, thump. Okay, and here he's going to be thrown forward by the impact. So we're going to flop him forward. Oh, oof. But maybe this kind of he's trying to resist the motion a bit. So we'll go in here and we'll create a new, go and create a new pose, and we'll call it impact. And notice that we haven't done the animation. We're just kind of creating poses, and then we're going to space them out. So, and this isn't following the tutorial. Doesn't matter. There's lots of ways to skin a cat or animate a cat. So actually, I don't think that's exaggerated enough. I think that he needs to be really bending, and you know, we could probably even, you know, squash him here, but I'm not going to do that. So here I'm going to update that pose. So again, we go bind, anticipate, leap, and then jump, and then thump. He lands, and then he's going to have to react to that. So that's an impact overshoot. So now let's go back to this pose, and we're going to create a rest pose, which will actually be the basis for our animation. So we'll just lean this guy forward slightly. You know, he's a tentacle. I don't think he should have terribly good posture. Okay, we're going to be like lean back a bit here, lean forward a bit here. He's a slouching tentacle. What can I say? Lean back, and then his head's kind of always, you know, a bit of a droop. And now we go back here and we create a new pose and we call it rest. Now, animation. So it's going to be a one. We go back into takes, and it's going to be a one. Oh, it's got a 0.5. Someone's already created a 0.5. Now, these takes were created when I was building it, and then I threw out the skeleton, so it doesn't work anymore. But anyway, so here's 15 frames. So he's going to start with rest. So I'm just going to select the hierarchy. I've always got to check the root bone and just record it. And it's currently set to record the hierarchy and also to record rotation, size, and position. We actually only need rotation and position. We're not scaling, so I'll just check that off. I'll hit return. I'll hit, sorry, record. So the basic idea is we're going to go anticipate, so that's got to be pretty quick. So we go to anticipate, set, and record. Nothing appeared, so okay, there we are. So now we're going to go here. He's going to go into the jump pose really fast. We'll start off by putting it right on the next frame. So we go over here and we choose leap, and then click on that again and record. So he goes bang. Now he's going to land. We might make it land about here, and we'll say impact, boom, he lands. Okay, and we click on here and we record, and then we have to get back into rest position pretty quickly. So we'll set rest again, click here and press record. So here's the cycle. Let's press play. It's a little bit too fast, isn't it? It's a little bit too fast. So what we can do is just grab this control, and we'll push that out to about here. I think that's not the problem. The problem here is in the setup. So let's give him a little bit more time to anticipate and 2 frames to react. So let's go again. And there you are. There's a jump cycle for a tentacle created in Cheetah 3D in not very long time. not bad really. I mean, obviously it could be tweaked a lot, but you know, that's not bad. Now, one of the nice things, just final aside, so all through this, let me go to the takes. And I'm going to create a new take over here. And then I'm going to go into the object browser, and I'm going to change him to bind pose here. Set the bind pose. So we have problems with the binding here, and we're getting this problem where when he bends his joint, he screws up the thing. So that's what we're going to do. Is we're just going to destroy this binding altogether. Okay, and then we're going to go and take this joint, the problem joint. What I'm going to try and do is move it over here and down, and I'm going to take this joint here and move it back. But we have some problems, which is this joint here is going to have movement data. So if I go back to, if I create a new tab here and have F-curves, and I click on this, there's going to be bad data associated with it. Not in this particular take, but let's. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go in here and I'm going to rebind. I'm happy with. I think that'll create a better binding. So I'll just go create a new skeleton. In one motion, I drag this over and I auto bind. But the animation data, if we go back to this take over here, and we look at the joints that we moved, we'll see that they have position data. Now, all we've done with those joints is rotate them. We've never actually positioned them. So the position data is bogus, and we can just delete it. And I can do that with this joint as well. Again, I'll toggle off the rotation data, and you'll see the position data is flat. The thing is, it's flat and it's wrong, so we're just going to delete that. I didn't have to record the position data. We only really needed the position for these two joints here, but that's just going to make sure that we don't screw up our animation with the new positions. Now, I should note that it hasn't actually solved the, oh, actually, maybe it has, just a moment. So if we go back to the first take, and we switch back to the bind pose, set. All right, so okay, so the problem is not as easy to fix as I thought. So we can go back into the skeleton here, and we can go and see what the problem is. Now, let me turn this modifier off because it'll make it easier to see what's going on. All right, and let's go into here and check out the actual bones. And what we see here is that this joint here that we've kind of got bad influence here. What's happening is that this joint here is associated with the things in between. It would be nicer if the skeleton were, the joints were in between the suckers, because what's happening is this thing here is getting this area of influence, which is causing the suckers to be incorrectly positioned. So given that I've only invested 30 minutes or so in this rig, what I would probably do is build the rig over again and be careful to put the joints in between the suckers. And in fact, if you look at the way I've constructed the control mesh, it's done in anticipation of my doing that. So you've just seen me learn the same lesson the hard way a second time. But I hope that's enlightening. It shows we've created a rig, we've done a little bit of animation, and I've also shown you how you can kind of diagnose issues with your rig. I won't go into vertex painting here, but we could manually paint the vertexes to fix it. But a better option, given that I haven't invested a huge amount of time in this rig, would be to rebuild the rig with the joints in between the suckers. So that's the first animation tutorial. I hope it was useful.